Marcus Carlson is here with me in the studio. And first up, Marcus, the IMF has said it will help out Ukraine with its dire state of finances, but there will be a heavy price to pay.
Yes, there are some strings attached indeed. The International Monetary Fund is rushing through a bailout for Ukraine. It's pledged between $14 and $18 billion altogether. The money's meant to shore up Ukraine's battered finances and also to boost the Ukrainian government. In return, though, as you say, Laura, the IMF is asking for measures that Ukrainian officials describe as painful. Prime Minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk, he says that there is basically no other option, though. Jennifer Lush has more.
He's dubbed his government suicidal because of the deeply unpopular measures it has to take. But Ukraine's new Prime Minister says securing an International Monetary Fund loan is absolutely essential to staving off bankruptcy.
If these laws are not accepted, we predict default, and we predict a 10% decrease in GDP.
The IMF has pledged a $14 to $18 billion bailout package for Ukraine. It's a boost for Kiev's government, which has been struggling to stabilize the economy after months of political turmoil. But the deal comes with strings attached. Ukraine must stop clinging to a currency peg that has seriously depleted central bank reserves and kept the hryvnia at an artificially high level. It must also tighten its belt, with a target of reducing the budget deficit by 2.5% of GDP by 2016. But what's likely to be the most painful condition for households is a cut to its energy subsidies, a move that'll see domestic gas prices rise by 50%. Ousted President Viktor Yanukovych refused to take this step, but economists insist there'll be help for the hardest hit.
The poorest will be supported by the government, and that will ease the effect of the IMF plan.
Ukraine's finance ministry says it needs $35 billion over the next 2 years to avoid default, and the IMF's pledge goes some way to achieving that figure. The EU and Japan have already promised further aid, the total amount of international assistance reaching around $27 billion.
Meanwhile, Russia is trying to deal with the fallout of Western sanctions against the country. And President Putin says he wants to create a Russian payment system to rival Visa and MasterCard. This follows an American decision last week to sanction a bank that's used by some of Putin's closest allies. It led to Visa and MasterCard suspending services to customers of Bank Россия. Russian officials have criticized the reliance of Russian banks on Western card companies, and this is what President Putin had to say.
It's a pity that some companies made a decision about some well-known restrictions. I think this will simply lead to the loss of certain market segments for them, a market which is very profitable. Well, it's not our decision. We have to protect our interests, and we'll do it.
We are going to turn to the stock markets next. A fresh batch of data painted a pretty rosy picture of the U.S. economy this Thursday. Fewer Americans applied for jobless benefits last week, and growth in the fourth quarter last year came in higher than previously thought. Despite that, American stock indices actually closed below the flat line, as you can see there a little bit earlier. Let's also talk you through this graphic. In Europe, we saw shares closing lower in Paris and in London, as well as in Moscow. The Moscow MI6 was down 1.3%. It was a slightly different story over in Germany, where the DAX in Frankfurt closed higher, only slightly so. We need to add that. Let's take a look at some of the stories that shaped trading this Thursday. Banking shares have been under pressure in both the United States and Europe. It comes after the Federal Reserve barred Citigroup from raising dividend payments to shareholders and buy back its shares. The Fed said the American bank may need the cash if there's a sharp economic downturn. Citi is the biggest out of a total of 5 lenders that fell short of the requirements in the Fed's annual health check of American banks. Alstom also suffered on Thursday here in Paris, and its share price closed 5% down. It followed a Bloomberg report the French engineering group could face one of the largest ever anti-corruption fines. The US Justice Department is currently investigating allegations of possible bribery in Asia by Alstom. The French company says it's cooperating with a probe. And Qatar has agreed to buy 22 helicopters from a unit of aerospace giant Airbus. That's according to the French Defense Ministry. It also says the deal is worth nearly €2 billion. All of the helicopters would be of the type NH90. The French Defense Ministry also says that Qatar will be buying 2 refueling tankers, also made by Airbus. That is the business news for now. I'll be back again next hour, Laura.
Marcus, thanks very much indeed. We're going to take a short break and find out what's got people clicking and sharing over the past 24 hours. It's time for Web News.